Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special Global Entrepreneurship Week edition to our Career by Design webinars. Today, during the session, you'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner, there is a chat icon. We encourage you to participate and share your questions via the chat box and throughout the session. And at the close, we'll be addressing all those questions. Please let me know if you have any trouble hearing. You can also put notes in that chat box and we'll be able to address any questions you have. Today, without further ado, I want to welcome Greg Skloot, the 2010 alumnus of the DeMoore McKim School of Business, who is going to present our Startup Marketing Playbook. So I will turn it right over to Greg. Thank you very much for coming.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Valerie. And everybody, thanks so much for having me here. I'm so excited to be celebrating Global Entrepreneurship Week at Northeastern with all of you and talking about marketing for startups, something I think about probably way too much these days. So again, my name is Greg Skloot. I'll give you a quick background. I graduated from Northeastern in 2012, so just 5 years ago. So it feels like I could walk back in and still be a freshman tomorrow. And since then, had a bunch of fun, startup entrepreneurship experiences. A few years after graduating, I founded a company called Attend.com. This is based out of Boston with software for event planners. The first venture-funded startup I was a part of, my co-founder and I had no idea what we were doing. Learned a lot along the way. And most recently, I've been leading growth at Netpulse, which is a bit of a larger startup out of San Francisco. There I run marketing, and now I oversee a couple other functions as well, like sales and customer success. But today we're gonna focus quite a bit about startup marketing. So without further ado, let's get into the good stuff. In general, whether you're starting a new company, you're joining an existing company, in my case, like I joined Netpulse, and your role is marketing, or your role is to just grow the company in general, typically the number one desire of most startups, whether it's the CEO, the founder, whoever, is to get more customers, right? As a startup founder or leader, that is what I think about most of the time, is how do I get more customers, okay? So, today we're going to focus on what I like to call the first step in acquiring customers, which is marketing. Now, I'm going to preface this with marketing in a startup can be really tough, especially when you're starting from scratch and nobody knows who you are and you don't have a lot of recognition in the industry. So to keep things simple today, what I did was kind of break down 5 simple steps to get started. And we'll go into detail about each one. But, whether you're at a very early stage company, you're having to build marketing or relaunch marketing or help get new customers at an existing company, hopefully something out of these 5 simple steps will be relevant to your process too. So let's get into them. So when I think about marketing and getting new customers, the first step is creating a story and personas. And it's interesting because this is a step that people often overlook. We often want to go right to putting out advertisements and sending out marketing emails and, wrapping the tea with a big promotion, whatever it might be. But what's really important to get done first is your story and your personas. I'll go into what those are. So to create a story and personas, we need to answer a couple of key questions about our product. So before we can really acquire customers, we need to know who is it that precisely uses your product? What are the benefits of your product for that user? Right? Why should a potential customer buy your product over a competitor's product? And what industry trends mandate your product? Why is it that your product is as a need to buy now? So for most entrepreneurs, these questions should be pretty easy to answer. Right? You should be able to jot down a quick note now to the answer to each of these questions. But we're going to use that to help craft our story and personas. So let's start with the persona. A persona, and I'm using maybe it's a new word for some people, but all this is a detailed description of your target buyer. A detailed description of your target buyer. And this might include their tastes, their preferences, their likes, their pain points, their demographics. The key, before we can really start getting new customers, we have to have a very intimate understanding of who those potential customers are and what motivates them in order to successfully market to them. And this means going into quite a bit of detail. So on the screen now, you can see, an example of a persona analysis. As you can see, we go into quite a bit of depth here, whether you see in the top left her demographic and salary, a day in her life, the experiences she wants, her values, where she gets information. All this information is really important. And you can figure this out by actually talking to your customers. So I'd recommend, if you're starting out, you may have some early beta customers. If you're building a new marketing plan, maybe you have lots of existing customers, call them up on the phone and ask them if you could, interview them for half an hour and just ask them some of these questions. What's a day like in your life? What are the biggest pain points you have? And all these little nuggets that they're going to give you are going to be so insanely valuable as you start to build out a marketing program, right? So that's the first step, creating a persona, a detailed description of who your customer is. So once we have that persona, the next step is to start to write a story. So a story it includes a couple of different tangible items, but it starts with a 1 to 2 sentence overview, right? Some people call this the elevator pitch. I want to be able to explain really simply and succinctly what my product is and how it delivers value to my target persona, right? To the person that I want to become my customer. I want to be able to have a more in-depth summary. If you've ever seen a press release, you'll see a little summary at the bottom of each one. If Northeastern releases one, it'll say about Northeastern University, and it'll have a little blurb, usually a paragraph about it. We want to write something like that. We want to create a list of core values. So this is important too, right? When we're explaining what the product is, we want to make sure we can boil down what the value is to the potential customer in usually, I like to work in sets of 3. It could be less, it could be more, but I like to break it down 3 core values. So to give a quick example, at my last company, Netpulse, we build mobile apps for gyms. So big gyms like 24-Hour Fitness or Gold's Gym, they come to us when they want to launch a mobile app. And they're great. They know how to do fitness and weights, but they don't know how to build technology. So they come to us and we take our app and we can customize it for them and launch it into the App Store for them really easily and quickly. So when I break down that product to market to my target persona, which is the owner or executive of a gym, I break it down into 3 core values. And I did this by looking at all the features that my product has. And I said, okay, if I had to group these into categories that deliver value to my target customer, well, what are those? And I came up with, there are features that help the gym interact and engage with their members. That's number 1. Number 2 is features that help a gym sell more to their members, so increase their revenue. And then finally, there are features that help the gym connect all of their technology tools into one seamless experience for members on their smartphone in an app. So when I boil down my product, I can connect it to these three values: engaging members, increasing revenue, and connecting technology into a seamless experience. And what's good about understanding those super simple 3 values is every time I pitch the company, every time I write about the company, every time I'm describing it in an email, instead of having to think, oh wait, how should I describe this? I can always just think back to, well, we're a software company that builds mobile apps for gyms, and gyms want to buy a mobile app because it'll help them engage their members and make more money, increase their revenue, and connect all their technology together into a seamless experience. It helps me tell that story really succinctly. So then mission and vision statements, understanding what your company stands for, why it exists. When I first started thinking about this, I thought mission and vision statements were a little cheesy, but it's important to write it out in the beginning, because as you're going to see as we go into, later in this presentation, as we start to really do marketing, right, as we start to create ebooks and webinars and marketing emails and sales presentations, whatever it might be, we want to make sure we're speaking in the same language, saying the right information to the right person, and we want to make sure that it's aligned with why we exist, right, our mission and our vision. So ultimately, as we put all this stuff together, it creates the foundation of what I call a messaging and positioning guide. And this is no more than, it can either be a document or a slide deck that lists out your 1 to 2 sentence overview, your core values, maybe a little bit of description of each core value, your boilerplate, that's your paragraph about the company, your mission and vision. But once it's all in one place, we can see it really easily, and we can use it to help craft our marketing going forward. Right? So I like to think this is the stuff that, it's a little mushy, but you have to do it first, and you're going to see why it's going to make everything a lot easier. Right? And ultimately, as we're writing this story, right, we have to write it all with the thought of our target buyer persona, right, our target customer. We learned all about her when we did these interviews. So as we're writing, we have to think, well, okay, are these values that describe my company, are they things that our target buyer cares about? Do they align with her challenges and her problems and her needs? So that's something to think about too as you're writing. So as I mentioned, you're going to kind of keep using the same core story over and over again. And as I mentioned, it makes it easy to create content like ebooks and advertisements, whatever it might be. We'll go into that in more depth in a few slides. So all right, so that's going to be step one. Get the story written out, understand who we are, who we're selling to, and a really solid picture of what that buyer looks like. So once we know that, the next step, I know everybody's thinking we want to get to advertising and getting to customers, but the next step before that is we need some tools. I call it infrastructure, some foundational tools that we need to do marketing successfully. So to get started with marketing, I think you need 2 basic tools. These are 2 tools I implemented when I first launched my businesses. Number 1 is a marketing automation system. Number 2 is a CRM. Some of you may have heard of those, some not. That's all right. I'm going to go into each one right now. So the marketing automation system, this is simply, it's a piece of software, it's a software program that you're going to use to carry out marketing tactics. For our friends in Boston on the line, right? If you're familiar with HubSpot, a really successful Boston company, they're one of the most popular marketing automation systems. Okay? And so marketers use products like HubSpot and their competitors to do all different types of marketing tactics. For example, sending emails, tracking your contacts, which are your leads, your buyers, their activity, publishing blog posts, collecting leads on your website. Lots and lots of, pretty much all of the major marketing tactics you do will connect back to your marketing automation system. So this is kind of a foundational tool you need to do all the other marketing we're going to talk about during today's webinar. And again, I'd look at HubSpot as a great vendor for them. They compete with folks like Marketo and Pardot. All right, so the second piece of kind of core infrastructure, something you need to get started, is a CRM. Now, it stands for Customer Relationship Manager or Management. And I like to think of this as the mothership. It stores all your data about each of your customers and prospects. And as you're growing a business and you want to market to people and you're selling to people and you're keeping track of your customers, you're going to find that as your business grows, it is really tough to keep track of all that stuff. You sure as heck don't want to do it on paper or in a spreadsheet. And I assume if anybody's just starting out, you may have not launched a CRM yet. And I bet for many of the folks in the room that are running a business that's already established, you probably have something like this, right? So a CRM has different fields that relate to a contact, like their email address and their title and any other details about them. And every time you interact with one of your customers or your prospects, that data is going to be logged in the CRM. And you're going to start to see why this is so important as we start to do marketing tactics. Because, for example, suppose that you send a marketing email to 100 prospects, 100 potential customers, and 10 of them reply, and the other 90 don't reply. You want to send another email to just the 90 that didn't reply. Now, if you don't have a marketing automation system in CRM, you have to do that manually. You have to go back and look through your inbox and figure out which ones didn't reply and then manually take those off the list. And that stinks. I've done that before. So what these tools do is track all of that activity and make it so you can just press one button and say, send a follow-up email to all the people that didn't respond to my first email. And that is just super, super powerful as you're growing marketing. Now, as you grow, you're going to start to see lots of different marketing tools. Some people refer to it as a marketing stack, and that is just simply a list of all the tools you use for marketing. Now, you're going to see from this little graphic I included, there is a absolute glut of marketing tools out there, something that does everything for everybody. And a lot of marketers are tempted to try everything, and before you know it, you have 15 different products you're using. And that's okay. You could explore. I recommend in the beginning, keep it simple. You might find a couple extra tools to help solve some of your problems, but most importantly, to get started with marketing, you need a basic CRM and you need a basic marketing automation system. All right. Right? You can start with simple tools that make you more efficient. Okay. So now let's get to the good stuff. Once we've figured out our personas and our story and we've gotten our basic tools in place, it's time to generate demand. It's called demand generation, and this is just a marketing lingo for do marketing. You're going to notice that marketers have a lot of annoying words. One of the things I'm trying to make sure in this webinar, in case anybody's not familiar with them, I'm going to make sure I define each one as we go. Right, so generate demand just means getting customers interested, getting prospects interested in your product with the hope that they're going to become a customer. All right. So when we talk about generating demand, what this essentially means, and I want everybody to visualize this with me for a minute. We want to take a person, or what we're going to call a target. And a target is simply a person that matches your buyer persona criteria. So let's say, I'm going to use my example. I sell a gym, so my target is gym owners that don't have an app or that want an app. But in general, it's gym owners. And my goal in marketing and sales is to ultimately convert just a Joe gym owner, random gym owner out there into a customer of my company. And in order to do that, I need to take him on a journey. I'm going to use this as a little analogy. We're going to take this target person, this person that could become my customer, on a journey from where he is now to learning about my product, to maybe talking to some of my salespeople, and to ultimately becoming one of my customers. And what the graphic you see on your screen is called a marketing funnel. Some of you may be familiar with this. It is simply a visualization of that journey that a person takes from the time they are just match the criteria of being my target persona to actually buying my product. And just to quickly define these words, right? Target means it's a gym owner. A lead is a gym owner that I have contact information for. Because remember, my target is anybody with a gym, but I don't know who all those people are. They're just out there in the universe. So once I get their contact information, they become a lead. A lead is simply a target, someone that matches the criteria to become a customer, that I know who they are. I have their contact information. Now, just as I have that contact information doesn't mean they want to talk to me. So a lead goes down the funnel, moves through the journey, and becomes an opportunity. The third step, once they indicate that they're ready to talk to a salesperson, they're ready to go through a sales process and actually consider buying my product. And then, if and when they choose to buy my product, they become a customer, the last step in the journey. And if you'll notice, the way the funnel is shaped is purposeful because there's lots of targets at the top. It's every gym owner in the world. But I'm only going to get a portion of those people to actually get their contact information. So that box is a little smaller. And of that group, I'm only going to get a portion of them that want to talk to me and talk to sales. And of that group, I'm only going to get a portion of them to become a customer. Okay. Marketing helps us move those people along this journey through this funnel to ultimately become a customer. Because they're not going to move from step to step by themselves. We have to help them do it. And that's what we're going to talk about now. So, in modern marketing, and to be sure, a lot of what I'm talking about right now is specifically for B2B marketing, right? Marketing to another business. So if your product is for marketing directly to consumers, you have to extrapolate some of this and convert it. And when I say business, just assume consumer. And there's of course be some differences, but just important to note. So inbound marketing is really great. It's simply a methodology, it's a strategy of how to do marketing effectively. And it works like this. first step is creating content that appeals to your target persona. When I say content, I mean stuff on the internet, webinars like this, ebooks, blog posts, infographics, podcasts, videos, anything that somebody reads or watches or listens to or consumes on the internet. And the key is to create content that appeals to your target persona. So we learned all about our target persona. We had that big list. And we know that she really cares about, I'm going to keep using my own example here. My gym owners really care about fitness. Go figure. So if I create content about fitness and they go on Google and they search for fitness and my website pops up, they're gonna end up landing on my website. And once they're on my website, I can further market to them. But the first step is creating content that appeals to your target persona. Right? The next step is posting that content on your website and your social media platforms, as we just talked about. That, as I just alluded to, is going to attract your target persona to your website because they're searching for this type of content on the internet or they're seeing it on their social media. Now, once they get on your website, we need to convert them. And what that means is taking a stranger and getting their contact information, which is kind of what our parents always said not to do. But in this case, we're going to do it. So now this works in a couple of different ways. Traditionally, this includes something called gating content, which means putting let's say an ebook up on the website and making it so a visitor or a target has to fill out a form and give you their name and their email address and maybe their job title in order to download that free ebook. So you're giving it away, but you're asking for a little something in return. And if your offer, your content, if it's good enough, then people will be willing to give you their contact information in return for downloading it. And when they do that, you now can have the ability to market to them additionally, show them additional offers, content that might be relevant for them. And there are other ways now this happens too. It can happen through an automated chat service like Drift, another Boston company, on your website. You could give the content away for free. But ultimately, we want to get people to the website with your content and get their contact information, whether through a web form or a chat service, etc. Now that we have their contact information, the next step is to nurture them until they're ready to talk to sales. Now, by nurture them, I mean educate them. Send them additional content that's relevant to their interests. Maybe some of that content talks about the problems that your product solves. Right? But the idea is to make them more comfortable both with your product and the problems that it's solving so they become more interested. This process ultimately guides them. It guides them along that funnel, that journey towards actually making a purchase. So I alluded this to a little bit already, but again, the types of content, right? Blog posts, ebooks, webinars, how-to guides, videos, right? We covered that. And how do you distribute the content? And again, that's going to be through your website, through social media, through doing a weekly email blast. Because remember, as you build up this list of leads, of people that downloaded your content, you can now offer them additional content through weekly emails. You can also do what we call paid media, which means advertising online. This could be Google AdWords. It could be a paid post on Facebook or LinkedIn. You could also include traditional media like a direct mail or a bench advertisement or a T-Wrap, whatever it might be. All right. So that is a quick summary of how inbound marketing works, how we're actually generating demand for a product. Now, as you can see, writing this content, right, these blog posts and ebooks, guess what the content, the topics for these pieces come from, right? Our story. Often what we find is that we are regurgitating that core story in different ways in all of this different content because everybody learns a little differently. Some people might enjoy listening to a webinar. Other people might want to read an ebook. Others might not have the patience for an ebook but might read a short blog post. So the idea is simply to create these different types of content that appeal to different members of your target market, and and ultimately get them to convert. All right, quick breather here. All right, let's move on to step 4. All right, so step 4, assembling a team. Now, I'm going to preface this with, if you're an entrepreneur starting from ground zero, you're at the very beginning, you're not going to be able to assemble a team. In fact, you are going to be doing all of this work yourself. But as a marketing team takes place, in order to actually accomplish everything we just talked about in step 3, you need a bunch of different people. You need somebody that can write, because you need to write content. You need a designer, someone that can take that writing and create really nice looking ebooks and graphics. You often need a front-end developer. This is somebody that can make your website and edit your website with some code. You need a demand generation manager. This is somebody that is actually orchestrating and organizing all of this and measuring the results. And often as the team grows, you need a product marketer, which is somebody that's going to be keeping track of how customers are interacting with your product and further refining that story and creating collateral, like flyers and stuff like that. Figuring out what the content the topics of the content should be, right? So what should you write the next ebook about? So again, in the beginning, these are roles that one person might do. When I first joined Netpulse, I did all of these myself. And then slowly, over the next year or so, we hired additional people to fill each role. Okay. So finally, step number 5, measuring and optimizing. So, marketing today is highly measurable. This is, a phenomenon that's happened in the last particularly, 10 years or so, is marketing went from this very fuzzy, kind of like all creative, not measurable, but just big picture ideas, kind of like what people would stereotype marketing to be, into something that's a lot more technical, very data and analysis driven. We now have the tools to track marketing. And what we want to do is track something we call attribution, which means which of our marketing resulted in a new customer or a new lead. Because once we figure that out, we can spend more time doing that type of marketing and less time doing other types of marketing that are less effective. For anybody that's been around the marketing industry for a while, you may have heard the joke, I know that half of my marketing is working, I just don't know which half. And that's kind of been the classic problem, right? But with digital marketing, with all the tools we have, like our marketing automation system, we're actually able to track these things very carefully. And it's important to note that each channel, and channel just means marketing distribution network. So for example, email, direct mail, social media, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it might be, is going to work differently for each product. For example, like in my gym business, Facebook ads actually seem to work pretty decently. But LinkedIn, a lot of gym operators just don't use LinkedIn. So we stopped wasting money on LinkedIn. But man, I bet if you're selling to salespeople or just more like kind of more white collar, sits at a desk type of person, I bet LinkedIn would be a great place to advertise. So it's important to test and figure out which channel is right for your product. There's no magic answer. As you do, you're going to start to track some simple metrics. Examples like how many leads are you getting per day? Well, which channels, like LinkedIn versus Facebook versus email, are getting you the most leads? Where's your website traffic coming from? How are people learning about you? You're sending out emails. This is in the bottom left now. How many people open them? You distribute content. You put out ebooks. How many people are willing to give you their contact information to download the ebook versus how many people visit the website, see the ebook, and say, nah, not worth it, right? And how much are you spending for each of these channels? Right, as you start to test and experiment, you can optimize. You can say, I am getting way more leads from LinkedIn rather than Facebook, so I'm going to stop investing in Facebook, or vice versa. That's the optimization. So that is our 5 steps. So let's do a quick recap here. Right, we started with defining a story, understanding who our target persona is and how to talk to them in a way that resonates. We build some basic infrastructure, put some tools in place that we need to actually do marketing. Then we generate demand, aka we do marketing, and we often will use the inbound marketing strategy, one of the best ways to attract potential customers to our website and ultimately convert them. Once we start to grow and we want to scale this, we need to assemble a team and bring in really great folks for each of these roles. And then as we're going, we want to constantly be measuring and optimizing, to see how to do marketing in the most effective way possible. So that covers the big stuff. Some resources, and these are both websites that I've actually built. So the first one is the Startup Marketing Playbook. So this is actually a website. You can go to startupmarketingplaybook.com. And this webinar is a bit of an adaptation of some of the content on there. But this website has 50 articles about all the different steps I've taken to launch marketing, actually, and it uses my gym company as an example. And I go into pretty good depth on everything from, running a trade show to doing a webinar to writing an ebook. And they're kind of like how-to guides. So I hope they're helpful for you. And the other website, Startups Heart Customers. This is a really cool site that is designed particularly for beginners. So if you're really new to sales or marketing, or maybe you're on the technical side of things, you're an engineer, but you want to learn how the business stuff works. This is a really fun website that breaks down sales and marketing in really simple language, makes it really easy to learn. So I'd encourage you to check out both and let me know what you think. So that's the prepared stuff I have. Would love to take questions. And please, my email is my first name and my last name, greg@skloot.org. Please feel free to shoot me an email anytime. Would be more than happy to hear what you're working on and help in any way I can. But otherwise, thank you so much. And Valerie, I think we could take questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Greg. If anybody has a question, you can go ahead and type it into the chat box, which is in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You'll see the little icon there. To kick it off, Greg, I have a couple questions, and we have a couple questions that have come through. One thing I'm wondering about, I know you launched these companies from the start, so really from the early stages. It seems like this marketing, it seems overwhelming. There's a lot to do and a lot to think about. What percentage, when you were getting started, what percentage were you dedicating towards marketing efforts versus operations, product development, all that stuff? And how did you handle sort of all of those components?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it is tough. When you're an entrepreneur, you are just juggling so many things at once. So when I started, usually in the very, very beginning of building a company, you're in product development mode, and you're really focused on figuring out what the product is, building it, designing it, testing it. You're not quite ready for marketing. Once you figure out the product and it's built, and you get some beta users testing it, whether it's shipping them a good or giving them a piece of software, then you're kind of ready to start with the marketing process. And that's when you start with the figuring out the persona, talking to different people, and writing the initial story. I'd say that marketing ends up being a very small percentage of my focus in the very early days, and then gradually increases and increases. I'd say that once the product exists, your pretty much main goal is to get customers. So I think marketing, and this includes kind of sales too, but ultimately the steps to acquire customers, you end up spending the majority of your time on that if you're the business person once the product exists. And, operations is often something that, especially in the early days, there's not a ton of, and you want to try to batch in small pieces because operating the company is important, but ultimately you're being measured on how many customers do you have and how much money are you making and how much is the product growing. And that's where marketing comes in. So really, to sum up, a little bit in the beginning and a lot more, and often the majority of your time once the product exists.
Great, thank you. Another question is kind of back to that point where you're developing content and putting out content and you have that mailing list. How do you prevent fatigue among your customers if you're constantly emailing them and sending things, kind of risking them finding too much information, that weighing that content strategy?
Yeah. So, the first good rule of thumb is I only like to send one email a week. Any more than one a week, I think, is too much. So that's the first simple one. With that said, what ultimately is going to determine whether they find your emails helpful or annoying is if the content is valuable or not. So if you're creating truly unique content, you're building a product. Maybe it's maybe it's a new food, and you've become a real expert in this category of food. And for anybody that's really interested in that food, they're going to probably be interested in your insights if you have really interesting things to say. So the key is just creating content that's truly valuable. If it's generic or junky, then that's when you're going to lose people. So I think it's a combination of reasonable, of one email a week, and making that one email being really, really quality content, unique stuff that genuinely appeals to your target persona, which you should know if you did your research on building that persona and understanding who they are.
Great, thanks, Greg. One more question. You mentioned CRM software. Are there any that you recommend for sort of that early stage startup? Are there any particular products that you've used that have worked for you?
Yeah. So I'll use my last company. So when we started, we used HubSpot for our marketing automation, and HubSpot actually in the last few years has launched their own CRM product that's actually they give away for free. And I have to say it's actually quite good. So it's good for often like this, the smaller type of business. As you grow, you start to outgrow it. But what we did was we used HubSpot CRM for the first about year and a half, worked really well. And then as our product got more complex and we needed to track some more complex things, we switched to Salesforce. And Salesforce is the market leader in the CRM space. It's big, it's powerful, and it's expensive. I wouldn't recommend starting from scratch with Salesforce because it's just overwhelming. But I'd instead say start with HubSpot. And as you grow, if HubSpot scales with your needs, great. But if not, Salesforce is usually the go-to. And that's ultimately what I've used at my teams, a mixture of HubSpot and Salesforce.
Hi, Greg. We have another question. So Gustav says, a lot of successful companies create emotional appeal around their product. A people first, taste the feeling are a few examples. How important is this? And what are the best ways to identify what emotions to target? And then one more, in what should one think about when creating a slogan around emotions?
Yeah, so this all comes back to that initial story. I mean, of course, emotional appeal is incredibly important. And when we do those interviews, right, we understand our persona, we're going to be asking questions like, what pisses you off during the day? What gets you excited? When do you feel valued? When do you feel discouraged? We want to ask emotional type of questions because as people respond, we can use those to help craft our marketing. If somebody, let's say, I'm use my own example, let's say the gym owner says, I'm discouraged when I give a prospective member a tour of our gym and they decide and they never call me back. Well, maybe I'm going to write an ebook on the top 10 ways to give a great tour that result in a new member. And I'm going to write that by talking to other gym owners and getting their perspectives. But I'm appealing to this element that they've identified as a pain, something that maybe could emotionally trigger them too. So absolutely. And again, I think it's going to depend on your target. There are probably some types of buyers that are going to be more relevant for an emotional appeal, while others might need a more detailed, tactical, operational appeal. With respect to slogan, I'll tell you, I have always struggled with names and slogans. In fact, I always turn to my co-founder at 10.com. He was always way better at names and slogans. It's just the way his brain works. I don't know how he does it. It is really tough to come up with those. If you do brainstorming and you get a couple group in the room and you write out, I always start with words that come to mind that describe the product or describe the value. And as I see all those words on a whiteboard, I can start to form them into sentences. But unfortunately, there is no magic bullet to coming up with a great name or writing a great slogan. It takes brainstorming and find your super creative friends because you need them to do that well.
Great. Thank you so much, Greg. If anybody has any final questions, please submit them now. But otherwise, we were thrilled to have you come and host this webinar today. And thank you to everybody that tuned in. We will be posting the archive of this webinar. So if there's anything you missed or want to go back to, it'll be on our Career by Design page with a link to our Alumni Relations YouTube channel that you'll be able to tune back into the webinar at any point. I want to just give people a couple of updates. We have our next Career by Design webinar will be December 15th, and it's called Styling for Success, which will feature alumna Amy Salinger, who will give you tips on professional dress and some fun holiday shopping career dress tips, professional business tips. And then also we have our next virtual networking session is for business connections. So anybody kind of working in business, whether it's business development, finance, marketing, anything, you can join and connect with alumni and students in similar fields to kind of build your network. And that's going to be December 7th at 7 p.m. And all this is Eastern time. So thank you again, Greg. And if anybody, we'll be sending out an email with a link to the archive. So we hope that you'll continue to tune in and definitely send any suggestions for future webinars our way. And happy Global Entrepreneurship Week. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me, and thanks, Valerie. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Have a great day, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.